Tiles are a great option for flooring. They're really durable, easy to clean, and with a bit of attention to detail, you can easily lay them yourself. I'll show you how to lay some new floor tiles and improve the look of your place. We'll measure out the area we're going to tile, drop down some tile and slate underlay, and then map out the tile layout design over top. Now, if you are tiling in a wet area, just make sure you call in a professional. Now, there's loads of different shapes and sizes of tiles you can choose. I've decided to go with a 600 by 600 porcelain tile. This is going to look absolutely brilliant down on our floor. Now, I've already ripped up the lino that was on the floor here. If you've got an older style house, you might pay to get someone in just to check the floor out, just to make sure that lino doesn't contain asbestos. Now, if this was a concrete floor, I'll just make sure there's no undulations, humps and bumps and that. You might want to grind it off. Because I've got a timber floor, I've been underneath it, I've checked it out, everything's nice and secure, the floorboards are in great condition, so the next step is to measure it up and start cutting our tile and slate underlay. So I've just drawn myself a little map, and I'm just going to take all the dimensions of the floor down so I can work out best how my sheets are going to look on the floor. Some cabinetry may not be aligned, so make sure you measure the area thoroughly. Okay, so that's 2530. That's about 1730. Now this is our tile and slate underlay. I'm going to use my little chart there from all our dimensions. I'm going to mark out the sheet. Now, one thing I will point out is I have allowed 5mm space from where our boards finish up to our toe kicks, so it does fit in nice and easy. Now, there's a couple of different ways we can cut this board. I could use the mighty angle grinder, which is going to be a pretty fast sort of job, but it's going to be very dusty and noisy. But what I'm going to use is this Lindbyde scoring knife. These are dust-free, nice and cheap and easy to use. So you just want to score this a few times so you're about half the way through, and then just bend it over and snap it off. Okay, I've scored that about half the way through, so that should be just about ready for me to snap that off. Nice and easy. Now, all I want to do is just clean up that edge. I can just use the edge of the scoring knife. That's just going to take off any dags. Right, the next thing I want to do now is throw some glue down on the floor exactly where this sheet is going to go. I've given the floor a really good clean and I've laid some glue. Now I'm ready to lay down our flooring and start nailing it. Okay, I'm just about ready to crack on with our nailing. Now these type of nails are specifically designed for laying the underlay. They're a 25mm underlay nail. Now the good thing about these sheets, I've already come pre-marked where all our nails need to go. They're about every 150 centres. Around our outside is exactly the same, except for on our corners, we want to come back about 50mm from each corner to put our nails in. So the sheets will be nice and secure when we lay the tiles down. Now I've laid down my first sheet and I've taken all my dimensions off that and pre-cut all the other sheets ready to go. So all I have to do is nail it off exactly the same as I did the first. Okay, all my sheets are down. Now I've made sure they're clean and dust-free. Next step is putting down our primer. A primer helps the adhesion between the tile and cement board. And you may need to use self-levelling compound if your floor undulates more than 3mm per metre. Okay, I'm now ready to do our tile layout. The first thing you need to do is find a nice straight wall for you to come off. In this particular situation, it's our kickboards of our back row of cabinetry here. So now I've measured my first tile and it is exactly 600mm. So what I'm going to do is come 603mm off each end of our cabinetry, and then I'm going to flick a chalk line down, and that'll be our first mark to lay our tiles to. It's a good idea to measure the tiles as there can be some inconsistency between batches. Now in the ideal situation, it would be great if I could have two full tiles side by side here, but because this is too small for that, what I've decided to do is have one full tile right in the centre. So what I need to do is measure from one side to the other, and I'm going to mark down our centre line. My width is 1178, so I got 589 is the centre. Now, because my tile is 600 millimetres, I'm going to come half of that is 300 mil. 300 mil. Now, what I need to do now is square from my chalk line up to that 300 mil mark, and that'll give me a guide for exactly where to lay this line of tiles. Now let me show you how I'm going to lay out the tiles. So this corner here on our map correlates with these two intersecting lines here. So this first tile, I'm actually just going to dry fit that, which means putting it down with no adhesive on it, because I want to pull that up later. Now our first couple of tiles we're going to glue down are these two here, then I'm going to cut in these two, and also cut in these two little ones around the back, and also just lay these two full tiles. I'll probably come back to this one out here. Now, once I've laid all of this area, I'm going to come back and pull up this first tile that's just sitting there so I can get right into this nook in here without mucking that up. Rightio, we're just about to mix up our adhesive. Before you do that, now there's a few different types of adhesive you can buy, so just make sure you read the back of the packet for the mixing instructions. Now, I'm using an electric mixer here. If you don't have one of those, you can use just a stick, but just make sure you mix it up nice and thoroughly. Rightio, I've already mixed up my adhesive. I'm just about ready to lay my first tiles. So what I'm going to do is mark out just under 1200 mil. That's going to give me 2 tiles. Now I'm just going to square that line across. All this is going to do is give me a guide so I don't put too much adhesive down. Because when you're laying adhesive, the last thing you want is that adhesive to skin off before you've started to lay your tiles. Now, because I'm laying a large format style tile, I'm going to use a 12mm notch trowel. So all we need to do now is to start laying out our adhesive. Ensure your notch trowel is the correct size and only do a small area at a time, as the adhesive can dry quickly. We use a notch trowel to ensure the correct amount of adhesive is applied to the surface. Okay, so just before I lay these tiles, I'm going to give them a damp sponge down just to take any dust or grit that might be left on the back. Cool. Now, let's just place our first tile down. Now just remember, our chalk line is our guides. We want our front edge to be up against that. And let's just work that down in so it's got 100% contact with all that adhesive in the back. The reason we came 603 mils, allowing ourselves a 3mm gap around the back, that's to allow for any expansion. So now we just want to slip in our 3mm tile spacer and onto laying our second tile. Spacers create a nice even gap between your tiles. So just as you're going, obviously we put in our spacers. We just also want to make sure that our tiles are absolutely flush with each other. If you find it's up a little bit, you might need to just knock that down slightly. You've got quite a bit of adhesive there to get that nice and perfectly flat. So just make sure you have a damp sponge on hand and cleaning any adhesive as you go. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is just measure up for our tile that needs to be cut. Go outside and cut it, throw it in. Now, let me show you how to cut tiles. There's a couple of different ways you can go about this. For a large format tile like this, you want a good quality tile cutter. Now just ensure your wheel lines up on your pencil mark. Bring your arm all the way back, and ensuring the wheel is touching the very edge of the tile. Nice even stroke all the way across the tile, applying even pressure. Now just give the handle a gentle knock down to snap the tile in two. Now at some point of your tile laying process, you're more than likely going to have to take a section of tile out like this. To do this, all we're going to do is drop this back down onto our tile cutter. And for good measure, we can put our stop down. Now, all we're going to do is make a score on both of these marks. We're not going to snap it off yet. Now, let's just spin that back around on our tile cutter and make a score on our second mark. And once again, line it up on our wheel and just press nice even weight. Now what we want to do is take this over to our bench. I'm going to cut one of these sides out with our angle grinder. So on our cut mark, let's throw some masking tape. That way, that's going to protect the tile from any chips that might come up. Let's just place this back in our tile cutter, and all we're going to do is use the tile cutter to snap our section off. Now that's looking pretty good. If you find that you do have a couple of dags left on there, what you're going to need to do is use a little nibbler like this, and that'll just crunch that out. Now another good use for these nibblers is if you've got a half circle, something like a pipe to chop out, these will do the job. I've measured and cut out my tiles, and I'm laying them down in the order of my tile plan. Lay the tiles gently on the adhesive and press them firmly into place. Put the tile spaces in around the edges and then adjust to fit, cleaning up any excess adhesive as you go. Okay, now with these skinny little tiles, what I'm going to do is put the adhesive on the back of the tile as opposed to putting it on the floor, because my trowel is never going to get in underneath that kickboard. Okay, so I'm just about ready to tile inside this little alcove here. Now, I'm just going to take out this dry fit tile so I can actually get in there to lay those two tiles. Now I've just about finished laying my tiles. I've pre-cut this tile trim. That's going to sit right out the front there, just underneath our tiles. Now that gets glued down with our tile adhesive. So I'm going to put down the adhesive, lay the tiles as per norm. Rightio, that's looking absolutely fantastic. Now we want to leave that for at least 24 hours before we do anything else to it. Okay, it's been 24 hours. Now I'm just about ready to pop out my spacers and I'm just going to clean up any adhesive that might be stuck to the edge of my tiles. To do that, I'm just going to use one of these little trusty utility knife. Scrape out any adhesive, remove the tile spaces, and give the tiles a vacuum to prep the area for grouting. Now when you are mixing the grout, just make sure you read the instructions properly. Okay, now when it comes to your grouting, you want to start from your furthest point and just work out of the room. Take a little bit of the grout on the grout float, drop that down, and you want to actually work in a 45 sort of degree motion. You don't want to come down the length of your tiles, otherwise you're going to end up dragging it out. And really just try and work that grout in as deep as you can in between the tiles. Now we've chosen to match our grout colour to the tiles, but that's up to individual preference. It's a good idea to note the colour of your grout in case you need to replace a tile and re-grout. Okay, I know this looks a little bit messy. Don't worry about that. We actually want this to dry just to the point where it starts to look dusty, and then we're going to come back and clean it all off. Okay, now when you're removing the excess grout, just want to get that sponge nearly completely dry, and in the same fashion as we put the grout in, we're going to remove the excess on a 45 degree. Now you don't want too much water in your sponge, otherwise we're going to get air bubbles in our grout. Now when you are removing the excess grout, just make sure you do one side of your sponge per swipe. Okay, now we can't get all that off in one hit. What we're going to do is let that dust off again, then come back and give it another sponge. Okay, we'll come back for our second pass now. Really important, we don't want too much moisture on our sponge, and all we're going to do is just take off the excess. Okay, everything's looking nice and clean. Our next step is putting on our silicone. Now, I've chosen a silicone that's going to also colour match to our grout. So, all I'm going to do is work from the corner back towards me on a 45 degree angle. Let's just gently squeeze that in. Okay, I'm now just going to take off our excess silicone. To do that, I've got these nice little silicone applicator tool. Now, before I do that, I'm just going to use a spray bottle here with some soapy water on it, and what that's going to do is help remove the excess silicone and leave it nice and clean. And there we have it. We've transformed this kitchen with a brand new tiled floor. It looks great, didn't cost the earth, and was easy as.